while a thought has an energy and the next thought has an energy, it is out of the space between the thought that the next thought needs to emerge. It's said that it's the silence between the notes that makes the music. So that if you just had one note, that is just an uninterrupted noise, you can never have music. In order to have music, you have to have spaces between the sounds. Da, 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 and all of a sudden, you've now got the potential for music. So it's the space between the notes that makes the music. And it's the space between the thoughts that allows us to create. It's the source of everything. So this gap between our thoughts is a very important concept. It is said that the average person has something like 60,000 thoughts every day. The only problem is they have the same 60 thoughts today that they had yesterday, and they're going to have the same 60 thoughts again tomorrow, and we have this constant state of chatter going on in our heads, which is nothing more than the repetition of the same thoughts over and over and over again. And I've used the metaphor before of a pond, and on the surface of the pond is where all of the disturbances are. And on the surface of the pond we have the freezing and the thawing, and on the surface of the pond we have the collection of all of the debris and all of the dirt and so on, and all of the storms of our pond are on the surface. But if you go just below the surface, you have fewer disturbances. And if you get way down, way below the surface, you have the serenity, you have the peace. And it's the same that's true of your mind. On the surface of your mind is where all of the disturbances are. This is what we call chatter. And there's this constant 60,000 thoughts a day. I've got to do this, now I've got to do that. Oop, I want to get there, and I've got to do this, and I've got to do that. I've got to get the children, and the children have got to be picked up from school. And when after I pick them up from school, I've got to get some diapers and the diaper rash. And it's just this endless kind of chatter. So if you have a whole day in which you're conscious for, say, 17 or 18 hours, and you have 60,000 thoughts, you have almost no opportunity to go into the gap, which is the place where all creation takes place, the ability to create the life that you want and the peace that you want. If you can reduce that from 60,000 thoughts to 20,000 thoughts a day by meditating. And I always often say that when people say, I don't have time to meditate, I suggest that every time you stop at a red light, you have an opportunity to meditate. The light will stay red for 2 minutes, in many cases. You go into a deep meditation, as soon as you stop, there's always someone behind you to let you know when your 2 minutes are up. You don't have to worry about overstepping your bounds. And if you stop at 20 red lights a day, you've got yourself 40 minutes or so of meditation time. You can do it at any moment that you want. You can take the opportunity to do this. But understanding this concept of the gap, remember, it is out of the silence. When I talked to a composer of music, and he said the silence that the note comes from is just as important a part of the music as is the note itself. That you have to be able to go to that place. And it is true with whatever it is you want to create in your own life. It is out of the void. So the gap is not just a fun thing to talk about. It is a way of reducing the amount of chatter on the surface of your mind and going down to the depths where you'll come to make conscious contact with God, that which is indivisible. You can't divide the silence. Let me reread to you what Hawkins said about the mind. The letting go of thinkingness is facilitated by the awareness from the spiritual viewpoint that all thoughts are vanities, with no intrinsic reality or value. Their attraction stems from the exaggerated value that accrues from their being considered as mine, these thoughts, and therefore special and worthy of respect and admiration or even careful preservation. He says to undo the grip of the mind requires a radical humility and an intense willingness to surrender its underlying motivations. This willingness receives energy and power from the willingness that arises from the love of God and the passion for surrendering love of thought for love of God. You are surrendering love of thought for love of God. And then the gap, that feeling that you have, did any of you experience a little thing in your brain that just was like just a little spark of pleasure, like, oh, that little, how many could have that feeling when you go into that gap? Just for a split second, you go back and something goes through you, like through your brain, up through your spine, that kundalini. That's God. That's when you have no thought and you have gone past this idea that your thoughts are so important, and you've surrendered the love of your thoughts for the love of God. And you'll only know that in the gap.